This episode of the ResortLoop.com podcast is brought to you by Joffrey's Coffee and Tea Company. Joffrey's is proud to be the official specialty coffee of Disney. Enjoy drinks and pastries at Joffrey's kiosks throughout the parks and check out the Disney Specialty Coffee Collection only at Joffreys.com.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now stopping at Disney's Polynesian Resort.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. This is ResortLoop.com. I'm Tim Scott.
I'm Bob Collar.
And this is another international show.
Yeah, very excited for this show, Tim.
I am too. Joining us from the unofficial Universal Orlando Podcast is Lee Mallaby. Lee, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We're now. What time is it right now? It's what time is it, Tim? 2:39 here in the United States. What time is it where you're at, Lee?
It is 7:39.
Oh, you must have our lotto numbers for later today. Then, if that's that much ahead.
Yeah. What are the winning numbers?
If only I knew. I wouldn't be living here if I did know them. Let's say that.
Would you say you'd move to Orlando? Was that what you would do?
I would love to.
Absolutely.
It's a lot less easy for us over in the UK to come over. Unfortunately, it's easier to get into the UK than it is to get out.
Oh, no.
But let's not go into politics.
No.
Right, exactly.
We do this to escape politics.
Yeah, we could just swap. I think if everybody from your country and our country just swapped, because it's easier to get out of the countries than it is to get in. So.
Yeah.
So Tim.
Yes.
We were talking about Marvel just the other day. On a show, and Lee, who of course is intimately involved with all things Universal.
He's in the know.
Offered to come on the show and talk a little bit of Marvel and what he's hearing on the Universal side.
Yeah, because we usually don't talk about Universal a whole lot, and it's not that we're anti-Universal at all.
Right.
I know you're a big fan. I'll be honest, Lee, I've not been.
Really?
No, the past few years, I'm offering to the kids, do you want to go to Universal? Let's go check it out. They're like, no.
How old are your kids, Tim?
19.
Okay.
And 13.
Really? I would say they're the target audience for it.
I would think so, too. Now, I will say this year our vacation has been cut short due to a couple things at both ends, so that we lost some days there. But
yeah. We're going out for a week in October for Halloween Horror Nights, and we're spending the whole week on Universal property.
I heard it's amazing there at Halloween.
We haven't been to Halloween Horror Nights since 2004. This year is the 25th anniversary, and I can't wait to get out for it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You guys, that's a big deal for Universal. That is a huge deal.
I was listening to something today, and I think that it's their biggest money spinner throughout the year. So like Food and Wine is for Disney, Halloween Horror Nights is for Universal.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Now, am I right? It's not necessarily for the little, very tiny guys. You want to be more of a teenager for this kind of the Universal experience there?
This is where you're going to make me out to be a bad parent. We're taking our kids with us this time. Our oldest will be 16. Our youngest will be 11.
Okay, that's not bad.
She's a little nervous, shall we say that? But we've been doing our research and watching some films with her, and I've been quite surprised at the tolerance level for some of the stuff we've watched. Although Insidious did freak her out a little bit.
Ooh.
Now, just checking, is that your photograph on your Facebook page? The unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. That's not you, is it?
No, that's not me. That would be the returning icon of Jack the Clown for Halloween Horror Nights this year.
Yes. Okay. It's, if you've got small children, don't let them necessarily check that Facebook page. It frightened me, Lee. It frightened me.
I showed it to our youngest, and she went, "Well, he doesn't look scary."
He's smiling.
Okay.
Wow. That's
let's
awesome.
Let's see what you're saying in October.
Exactly.
Absolutely. All right. So let's, Lee, why don't you tell us how you got involved with doing podcasting and your baby, the Unofficial Universal Orlando Podcast.
I'm very proud of my little baby. Well, we went, Tracy and I, my wife who does the podcast with me, we first went to Florida in 2004 and completely fell in love with the place. Islands of Adventure was probably our favourite park when we came back from that point, but I think Disney was the place. For all we said Islands of Adventure was our favourite park, Disney was still the sort of main focus for anybody going for a trip over to Orlando. And we came back and we pretty much booked up within 3 weeks of coming back to go back in 6 months' time.
Oh, wow.
And we've all done it. You have that complete depression coming back from an Orlando trip. So at the time, I didn't even know what a podcast was. To be honest, I can't even remember how I found out about them. So I found a few Disney ones and started listening. And there was a few from the UK started up not long after we came back from our second trip. And I sort of reached out and got involved a little bit with a couple of them. And I did a trip report for one that sadly isn't about anymore, a podcast called Your Mousecast.
Okay, yeah, I remember them.
And kind of got the thirst for it. And went, I wouldn't mind doing that. So I sat there and kind of thought, right, if I did a Disney podcast, what could I bring to the table? And the answer was nothing, really. Because in the sea of the millions of them that there are, it's like, what can you bring to the table that's different than everybody else? Right. And I'd been sort of searching in the meantime, looking for Universal podcasts and stuff, and there was a few that had started way back, I think just after Islands of Adventure started, but none of them sort of lasted particularly long, and decided that that's what I wanted to do. So I actually was in talks with another guy who was talking about setting one up, and the chemistry wasn't there. I mean, you guys know better than anybody. If that chemistry's not there, it doesn't work.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We fake it well.
Very well, then. I'll give you that.
Oh, thank you.
So I thought, who do I know that I have the best chemistry with? My wife. Tracy, fancy doing a podcast with me?
Is she listening right now? Is that why you're saying? Oh, no.
No, she's upstairs. And she was like, I don't know. And eventually wore her down. And we started, our first episode went out on the 7th of April, 2011. So we just celebrated our 4th year of doing this show. And when we first started, it was only every 2 weeks. And now we're doing every week. And as I say, it started off just me and Tracy, and now we've got a cast of hundreds. We've got Darren and Hunter, who both live in Florida. Darren's annual pass holder goes there pretty much every weekend. We have a listener to the show who goes out and takes photos and videos and stuff from the park. We've got a guy out in Hollywood who covers Universal Hollywood for us. We've even got a guy out in Singapore who covers Universal Singapore for us. So it's just become this big, huge beast that keeps on growing, and it's consumed my life. And if you ask Tracy, it's not necessarily in a good way.
Lots of fun, though, isn't it?
Sorry?
Lots of fun, though.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, well, you guys do a fantastic job. It is, if anybody's thinking about going to Universal, you got to listen to Lee's show, because it just, talk about information. You guys give some fantastic information about the, and in a fun way, an enjoyable, fun way, which is, the goal. So
you're making me blush. Actually, one of the focuses we did when we first started out the show, because, when we first started, there was there isn't now. Universal are a very tough nut to crack as far as getting anything out of them. But when we started, it was like everybody knows the history of every Disney attraction and every Disney park that's ever been going. Right. But that Universal history hasn't really been put out there, and that was one of the first things that we wanted to kind of bring into that community, was delving into the history of the parks and the attractions and the story behind them and stuff. And I mean, we've had some great interviews over the years. I mean, there you talk about Halloween Horror Nights. We've interviewed Ron Schneider, who I'm sure you all know as the Dream Finder. Mm-hmm.
Right.
He was one of the creative guys behind the very first Halloween Horror Nights way back in 1990, I think it was, or 91. And then Michael Roddy, who worked on it for 10 years, he's now a Disney Imagineer. So we've interviewed him. And then even some of the guys that are there now, Mike Aiello, who's probably like Mr. Halloween Horror Nights himself. And that was the one that I was just sat geeking out to.
Yeah. Isn't that cool when you get to actually talk to heroes, in essence, heroes of ours? Yeah.
Yeah, they're like the celebrities of the theme park world.
Right, yeah.
And don't you
Well,
find
they bring so much to the table. I mean, they give us that joy when we go into the parks. It's because of those people, the people behind the scenes that most people don't even know their names.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the theme park designers love to design the what do you call it? The gory Halloween themed stuff.
I would like to do that.
Wouldn't that be cool? I'm not that artistic, but man, it is really awesome.
It is, yeah.
All right. Well, let's delve into then, since we talked about it at the beginning of the show. Now, Universal has its Islands of Adventure, the Marvel section. With for those of you that aren't familiar, Tim,
I've done some homework.
the only person possibly on the face of the planet not familiar with Universal Orlando. When you first walk in, you kind of go through their little area, like almost a main street, but it's not a main street. And then you go to the left. Once you hit the lake, you go to the left. And so you think about an area, what would you say, Lee, about the size of maybe Adventureland?
Yeah, I'd say it's comparable.
Around there. So about that size, but it's all Marvel stuff. So why don't you tell what are the main rides over there?
Well, obviously the first thing you see, and it's one of those things you can see from just coming up the road into Universal's the Incredible Hulk coaster, which is awesome.
It is awesome.
I love it. And then, there's two daft sort of off-the-shelf rides, Stormforce Acceleratron, which is your typical teacups ride, and then Doctor Doom's Fear 4, which is a drop tower, which is usually half an hour of waiting for 20 seconds of drop.
Right, yes.
And then one of the rides that, again, was opened with Islands of Adventure 16 years ago and still a lot of people's favourite attractions in those parks is The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah,
it's stunning. I mean, it's obviously that good that they pretty much cloned it when they made Transformers the ride as well.
Yeah, you're right about that. Right.
But that ride is amazing. Pardon the pun. It's stunning. We've actually ridden it. One of the first times we rode it, it broke down.
Oh, wow.
Have you been on it, Bob, yeah?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the bit where you get, spoiler for anyone who hasn't ridden it, Tim, when you get hit by the anti-gravity gun and you're blasted up into the air, that section, the screens weren't working. When you actually do it without the screen, it shows you how easily your brain is fooled, because the vehicle only tilts about 45 degrees, but then the building sets at the side move and you're blasted with air. But then you throw that 3D screen in, and it is absolutely stunning.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That would be interesting to do that without the glasses and the screen.
It was very interesting.
Yeah.
But then you've got the usual shops. There's some couple of restaurants in there, Cafe 4 and the Captain America Diner, which I have not been in, but that don't have the greatest of reviews. And the characters come out, meet and greet. You meet Spider-Man and some of the X-Men, and they come out on. They've got those. Is it the Can-Am sort of 4-wheel trike? That's a trike. Is a 3-wheeled vehicle, isn't it? Not a quad. Yeah, it's
the 4-wheel. Those little 4-wheelers.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. They do that once. I think it's every hour.
Yeah,
and actually some of the villains as well, which is pretty cool. You don't get to see a lot of meet and greets with villains. I think there's Doctor Doom and the Green Goblin. They called me a loser last time I was there.
He did what?
They called me a loser.
What?
I shouted something at him and he just did that L thing on his head.
Oh, wow.
I'm not sure I can go to the Universal Park now. I want to be nice. I don't want to be called names.
Well, they have villains there.
I guess. He's not a nice guy, I guess.
No.
But, so they have, and then, of course, they have all the different giant cutouts, I guess you'd call them, on the buildings.
It's very much based on the comic books rather than, say, the films and stuff.
Right. So what are you hearing as far as the Disney and Universal? Does it look like there's going to be any kind of cohabitation there of any sort?
It's quite an interesting one, because since Disney bought Marvel, everybody's been talking about just waiting for that time for Disney to basically take back the rights to Marvel, because I think it's something to do with the contract. They can't put anything. It's such an awkward contract, because if anyone wants to look at it, just Google it, because it's up online. But I know when the contract was signed, there was specific characters that Universal could use. So I think it was the Avengers, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and a few others. And then when Marvel was bought by Disney, the part of the contract was that they weren't allowed to use any of those, or Disney weren't allowed to use any of those characters within a ridiculous amount of miles east of the Mississippi or something. My American geography is terrible, so someone will be going, what the hell, what are you talking about? Which is why you're sort of seeing bits and bobs pop up out in Hollywood, that's Universal, out in Anaheim, and obviously over in Disneyland Paris as well. But this is the kind of Disney, this is why they've made such a big deal with Guardians of the Galaxy. I think part of the reach for making that film was to try and not just to make a film out of characters that, let's be honest, everybody loves that film as well, but with the thinking of that they're characters that they could use in Walt Disney World because it's not tied into the contract with Universal.
Gotcha.
But we were discussing it recently, because as I say, it comes up all the time, with Universal announcing recently that they're partnering with Nintendo to bring their games and characters into the parks. There seems to be this weird rumor going around that it's going to be replacing Marvel Superhero Island, which seems a bit weird, because the plot of land that's been talking about a retheme at Universal for quite a long time is Kid Zone, because it's way out of date.
Oh yeah, Way in the back there, is that the one with the little mouse?
Yeah,
guy?
Fievel and
right.
Barney and Curious George, and like those characters aren't relevant anymore, and that's where we're expecting it to go, and that's what we're hearing. But it still seems to be a lot of people are saying that it's going to be replacing Marvel Superhero Island. And we were discussing it on a recent show, and a listener who obviously knows the contract a little better than I did reached out to us and basically said that Marvel contract is, because when Universal signed the contract with Marvel were in desperate needs of money, and that deal with Universal basically kept Marvel going.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know they were in real dire straits at the time, so they were like, any injection of cash into it is gladly taken. But as far as the listener that reached out to us, he said basically Universal holds the rights in Orlando, and it's perpetual, which means they never expire.
Oh, wow.
But I know the fees go up every 10 years. Now, there are stipulations to it. I know that they have to keep the characters. They can't let that land go to rack and ruin.
Okay.
So the kind of like the thing with J.K. Rowling and the Wizarding World is it has to be kept up to a certain standard. And if they don't, then Disney can go, right, you're not holding those characters in the regard that we believe you should be. We shall take them back.
Oh, okay.
Now, I also know that if Universal go to Disney and Marvel with a proposal for an update to that land, Disney can't just go, no, we don't want you to do that because we want them, so they're not allowed to just say no. They have to reasonably look at it and judge it on its merits. And apparently, the big rumor we're hearing is that that's actually happened.
Oh, wow.
And in the works, no timeline on it at the moment, but a fairly decent refurb to Marvel Superhero Island is going to be happening.
Oh, yeah.
The rumour also surrounding it was that they were potentially going to put a new ride in. Now, as far as I know the contract, I'm not sure that's something they can do. I don't think they can add anything to it.
Oh, okay.
I think they can retheme, well, kind of like they did, because recently, was it about 2 or 3 years ago, they updated the Spider-Man ride to put all new 3D film in it and updated the projectors and stuff. And I know they've updated the meet and greet characters, their costumes and stuff to look more like the film characters as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But Universal have been working with Marvel for 16, 17 years now, and there's no reason for them to sort of pull out on that deal. And Disney will still be making money out of it because I'm sure they will be getting a piece of any merchandise that's sold in that park.
Sure. And why would Universal want to give it up? I mean,
exactly.
They're also making money off of the success of Marvel because that's where you got to go. If you're going to Florida, that's where you got to go to see them.
Yeah. Anybody in Disney walks up to a cast member and says, "Oh, I want to meet Captain America." They're like, you've got to go to some adventure."
It's a bit of a drive.
I am looking at the contract right now, and I have that section you were just talking about, Lee. It says the term is once the Marvel Universe opens with the above time period, the term of this agreement shall continue for so long as the Marvel Universe shall remain open, except for termination for material breach. And then it goes on to say the Marvel Universe shall be operated and maintained in a first-class manner consistent with the highest standards of the theme park industry and shall be deemed open only when operated in such manner. So there you go. That's exactly what you were just saying.
So it's basically Universal's to lose.
Exactly. And when it says has to be operated and maintained in a first-class manner consistent with the highest standards of the theme park industry, there are no higher standards than Disney's. So I can see where Disney's saying, we're not quite sure you're doing it well enough. So
it's such an awkward one, isn't it, as well? Because if Disney did turn around to Universal and go, right, we don't feel that you're upkeeping that land to our standards, who decides what that standard is?
Right, exactly. It would be a huge court battle that would go on for decades. Sure.
I've no doubt.
Yeah.
The only way that Universal are going to give up those rights is if Disney turn around and write them a rather large check.
Exactly.
Right.
And when they've got Star Wars on the horizon, there's no way I'm sure they're not that desperate for it.
Right. No, I think they're going to be okay. And so I do have to ask, though, have you been over to Disneyland Paris to see any of the new Marvel anything?
I have not. That's quite weird, really, that it's my closest Disney park and I've never been.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes, we've been over to Florida 4 times, never been to Disneyland. It's quite interesting, like I say, because then we were talking about it yesterday. It's quite interesting with Ant-Man coming out, whether that's something they'll try and put into Disney World as well, because I'm sure that isn't a character that will come under that Marvel contract.
Exactly.
Right, and really, you're exactly right, because you look at Big Hero 6, and Baymax and Hero are in the parks for meet and greets. And that's a Marvel property as well. So, I guess if Disney can skirt that, they're going to skirt it.
And they've done such a good job of it as well, though, because who knew Guardians of the Galaxy before that film even came out? When they first got mentioned, everyone was like, "Who?"
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I saw some posters or something like this is going to be really weird.
Yeah.
And then it blew up.
Yeah.
It was huge. Yeah. So. Well, very cool.
Awesome.
Very cool. So what is going on? What do you see in the horizon other than the not Nickelodeon, Nintendo going into the Universal parks worldwide? What do you got going on
worldwide? I know Springfield's just opened in Hollywood, and it's apparently better than the one in Orlando as well. They've got their version of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter opening next year.
Oh, wow. What are you hearing about that? Does it look like it's going to be even close to what you got in Orlando?
It seems to be pretty much the same.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see if they do sort of look at anything slightly different. I think if you look at what they've done with Diagon Alley and how that's changed from what they learned when they opened Hogsmeade, it'll be interesting to see whether they've implemented some of those, because like a lot of the big complaints when Hogsmeade opened were that the shops were too authentic. And when you get like 3 people in, you couldn't move.
Right. That is true, yeah.
I know they've changed that out in Diagon Alley. Whether they'll do that over in Hollywood, because I know when they were building Hogsmeade, J.K. Rowling was very hands-on. Everything had to be done her way.
Mm-hmm.
And I know with Diagon Alley, she kind of stepped back a little bit because she'd seen what they'd done with Hogsmeade and was like, you know what you're doing.
Good. Yeah, right. So she's kind of backed off a little bit. And
Yeah.
allowed them. Yeah,
I mean, we haven't been over to Diagon Alley yet. Let's say when we go out in October this year, but I cannot wait. I am the biggest Harry Potter fan. So
it is. I will say this, and you know the person I'm talking about who went over there and was just blown away by it. I know when we went, you feel like you're in the book or in the movies. It is amazing.
I'm going to embarrass myself now. When we went to Hogsmeade for the first time, I think I started crying before we even got anywhere near the entrance to it, and that's sad.
No, it's not. It does. And you know what? Honestly, and this is something Tim and I have talked about. I have a feeling you're going to find people doing that as long as Disney does it correctly. You're going to find people doing that at the new Avatar Land because it evoked so much emotion in people as well. But yeah, I mean, it's so real. It makes you. It brings out a lot of emotion when people walk in there.
Yeah, it's a place people want to be.
Yeah, and it's a whole new level of immersion. You know, that's what we talked about a lot on the show now. The days of just building an attraction are gone. It has to be an attraction inside its own themed land now. Right. You
now
don't see.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, you don't see theme parks doing that anymore, where they just build like a box, other than Transformers, I suppose was the last one.
Right.
But it's very rare now that you see just a standalone attraction going. It's usually, like, you look at what they're doing with Skull Island in Islands of Adventure now, the King Kong attraction that's opening next year, that's going to be like a little mini land as well.
Right.
And that does look awesome.
Right. I was going to say, Tim and I live near Cedar Point. I don't know if you're familiar with Cedar Point.
I've never been, but I would like to go.
Yeah, it is your just what you just said. The standalone attractions. They're the standalone roller coasters, and you stand in a boring queue that gives you no entertainment typically at all. Great, I mean, because you're riding some fantastic roller coasters,
world-class coasters.
Yeah,
and you know, they're all there in one place, but the theming just isn't there like you're seeing at the theme parks.
And that's an amusement park. The difference between an amusement park and a theme park. Right,
absolutely. Quick question: Have you ridden the Kong ride out in Hollywood?
Nope.
Oh.
It is one of those things we are desperate to get out to Hollywood.
Oh, if it's as good. If the one in Orlando's is good as the one in Hollywood, and I think it's going to be better.
We're hearing it will blow that out of the water.
Oh my gosh! I want to get there now. I want to go to Universal now.
Yeah, there you go.
You want to wait till next year, Tim?
I know.
That's all.
I mean, I wanted to go before now, but
just sneak. When next time you're up in Orlando, just leave the family in Disney and just sneak off.
Yeah, that'd go well.
Honey, I got to run over to downtown Disney.
No, my wife wants to go too. She wants to go too. We can't get the kids to want to go. That's all right.
They're old enough.
Yeah, that's true.
Just tell them go get go over to Club Cool. We'll meet you over there, and then hop in a car.
The cinema at City Walk. You can just put them in there and then say we'll be back in a couple of hours.
All right. Oh, how do you like the what's it called? Their version of the Fast Pass at Universal. How's that work?
The Express Pass.
Is it? Yeah.
It's one of those awkward ones. It's one of the first segments we ever did on the show was about the Express Pass, and it's see, Disney's have completely changed theirs now with the Fast Pass Plus and the Magic Bands and stuff. Mm-hmm. With Universal, it's I think the average price for it's $69 a day, but it can go up depending on whether it's peak season or it could go down. But it's only good for one ride on each ride.
Right.
I think that's one day, one park, but it doesn't include any of the Potter stuff.
Right.
But
okay.
So if you say like a family of 4, you're going to pay let's work my maths out here, $280.
Right.
For just your Express Pass. Now you can stay in one of the Universal hotels. We're actually doing it this year, and we did it last time. We stayed in the Royal Pacific last time, which is a fantastic hotel. And it cost us, I think it was $240 for the night, but you get unlimited express pass for the day you check in and the day you check out.
That's the way to go, it sounds like.
Yeah. So for virtually the same price, you're getting a night in a lovely hotel plus 2 days worth of unlimited express pass. And I think they know that because we're doing it for horror nights this year.
Mm-hmm.
So it means we can go to the horror nights and have a sleep in the next day and still sort of hammer out all the rides because we'll have that express pass.
Right. And it's walking distance. You can, from the Royal Pacific, just walk right over there. Yeah.
It's a lovely walk as well, actually.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We stayed there, 5-6 years ago when we were down. It's a beautiful resort. It really is.
Yeah. And then you've got the new one that's just opened, Cabana Bay. And then as they're knocking everything out at the park, there's the new Sapphire Falls opening next year as well.
Oh, okay. All right.
They're being extremely aggressive in that market.
It only benefits all of us.
That's right.
Absolutely.
When we go down there. So,
nice.
Very, very cool. Well, Tim, I think that's all I have for Lee.
All right, before we wrap it up, gentlemen, each of you, will there be a deal eventually between Disney and Universal over Marvel? Lee, what do you think?
I think eventually, yes. But I don't think it'll be for a long time.
Gotcha.
I agree 100% with Lee. Yeah, not for a while. Yeah, because the competition down there in Orlando is just so fierce. They're both just. Orlando or Universal rather, they stepped up the game with Hogsmeade.
Yeah, they did,
and now Diagon Alley, and which made Disney take notice and go, "Wow, we have really." Kind of dropped the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kind of facilitated a lot of what you see at the new Fantasyland. But they're reimagining the whole Avatar and who knows what Star Wars is going to look like. So I just think the competition's too big down there.
Yeah, I think if they didn't have Star Wars to play with, I think you'd be having a very different conversation.
That's true.
Good point.
That's true. I agree with you guys. I think eventually there'll be a deal. I think it'll involve something like maybe like a patent swap. There'll be something they want. It'll be an intellectual property, something that's like under the radar. And I don't know why. It's just a feeling I got.
I think a certain Peter Jackson property may come into play.
Ooh.
Yes.
There you
go.
I think Disney will go after the Lord of the Rings rights and then go, you want them, do you? Well, do you a deal then?
Yeah.
I love it.
That would be very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see who picks that up and for how much.
Yeah, it's fun to sit back and watch.
It is. It's quite an interesting one because I know apparently J.R. Tolkien's family don't want anything to do with it. I think they're not even happy with Peter Jackson making the films, apparently.
Oh, wow.
I did hear that. Yeah.
So it might be very interesting.
It is going to be interesting.
Because I think that's the one... Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm used to... I think that's the one big IP you've kind of got left on the table at the moment, I think, that really lends itself to a theme park.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
land.
True.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
That and Beverly Hills Cop. 1, 2, and 3. No.
And Beethoven.
3, definitely.
3, definitely.
Yeah, well, it was set in a theme park, so there you go. It lends itself perfectly to it.
There you go.
Show my age now.
Tim, that's all I've got.
Lee, tell everybody where they can find you once again.
You can find the Unofficial Universal Orlando Podcast on iTunes or Stitcher or at uuopodcast.libsyn.com. Or you can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/uuopodcast. I'm going to try and remember all these because I don't normally say these on our show. We're on Twitter at uuopodcast. Pretty much everywhere, just UUO Podcast.
Love it. Everybody, thanks for joining us. This is ResortLoop.com. I'm Tim Scott. You can find me on Twitter at ResortLoop10, Facebook, Tim Resort Scott, and the website, ResortLoop.com.
I'm Resort Loop Bob on the Twitter and Instagram. Don't forget Facebook.com/Resort Loop and rate us on iTunes. Tim, where else can they listen?
You can find us on the Stitcher. Everybody, thanks for joining us. Thank you, Lee, once again. This has been the Gateway to the Magic.
See you, everybody.
Enter a gleaming city where the never-ending battle between good and evil rages all around you. Marvel Superhero Island. You'll swing through the streets on the mind-boggling, eye-popping, first-of-its-kind 3D thrill ride, The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man. Then, hold on tight as the incredible Hulk coaster launches you from 0 to 40 in 2 seconds flat, sending you on a high-speed roller coaster rampage. And leave gravity behind on the diabolical Dr. Doom's Fearfall, which takes terror to new heights. Help the X-Men superhero Storm battle the evil Magneto in Storm Force Acceleratron.